Okay, so if you're watching this video, you've either found me from Cledlise Art and moved over to see what my big reason was for completely switching up how I do videos, or you're following me on this channel and you're following the mailing list. If you are following the mailing list, that is great because I'm no longer going to tell people to subscribe to me. There's no point. If you want to see my content on this channel, just follow the mailing list. It is the only way you can be sure that YouTube isn't going to decide that the subscription box isn't a subscription box anymore, and they'll let the algorithm decide what videos you see. If you want to actually see my content, don't subscribe, follow the mailing list. But anyway, I thought I would do a video all about the health reasons why I've had to completely switch up how I do what I do. Normally I keep this stuff off YouTube, but I've been making videos for you guys for so long. I kind of feel like I want to give an explanation because it's not something that I've come to lightly. It's not like I just decided, you know what, I can't be bothered. No, there were very, very serious reasons. Now, if you have any kind of, if you get triggered easily or very upset by mention of things like miscarriage and painful conditions, you really want to click off this video now. So let's go back to the very beginning, which was when I was pretty much 14, and since I've been 14 I haven't been well. And over the years I got sicker and sicker. I had things like chronic fatigue, constant abdominal pain, to the point where I would end up going to the ER 3 times a year minimum. I think the worst one it ever got was I went to the ER 6 times just because I was in so much pain. I wanted to die. You know, I thought, no, it's fine, and I held out, and I had, you know, as much painkiller as I could have. So I've tried all the painkillers. Codeine is the bomb, but it knocks you out. And I'm allergic to ibuprofen, so I can't take too much of it without swelling up like a pufferfish and being in so much pain that I can't play the guitar or the piano. So that's when you know it's bad, when you can't bend your knuckles. And aspirin can be a bit lethal for me because if I do that, you do not want to increase blood flow with me. It's a bad idea. So I would end up going to the ER quite a few times every year. And it was always the same thing. They'd say, oh, you know, we can't explain why you're getting these pains. We'll try and figure it out. And they just went through a catalogue of things that it could possibly be, and they could never find anything. They thought it was endometriosis. They thought it was, at one point they thought it was IBS, and then they just dismissed it. And then, or was it endometriosis? At one point they thought my gallbladder was failing. That one was scary. What else did they think it was? I can't remember. There's been so many different things it could possibly be, but my favourite one was when they suggested that it's women's issues, and so not their issues. If I was a more violent person, oh boy, I'd be in jail. But yeah, that one was my favourite, when the doctor would just completely dismiss it and say, oh, you're a woman, it must just be you have evil periods. Some women just have this. No. Being doubled over in pain where you cannot physically move is not freaking normal. But anyway, I just thought, I got to the point where I realised I couldn't trust these guys to, you know, they weren't going to listen to me, so why in the hell would I bother going to them? So I just stuck it out for years and years and years, and just got a ridiculously high pain threshold, which really bit me in the butt. It's not a good thing. It is not a good thing to have a high pain tolerance, because you end up ignoring things and thinking that certain things are normal when they are not normal. It is not normal to be in pain when you eat food. And I just thought I had an eating disorder, and every time I mentioned this to the doctors, they just said, oh, are you anorexic? Which always frustrated me, because I was clearly not anorexic. You know, I wasn't overweight, but I was not anorexic, that's for sure. And I always found that quite confusing, because I was eating stupidly small portions of food. If I was lucky, I would be eating maybe 1,400 calories a day. It was closer to 120 or even 800 calories. And I'm not exaggerating there, because I kept a food diary for a long time, okay? I did not eat enough food, and somehow I either maintained my weight or I even put on weight. And eating food was painful. As soon as it hit my stomach, it felt like my stomach was on fire. But because the doctors dismissed any notion of me not liking food, I just said, I don't like food, I find it uncomfortable. What I should have said is I found it flipping agonising, but like I mentioned, high pain tolerance, and so my perception of what was normal was completely skewered. And so, I go through this for years, where food is very painful. I'm not eating enough, as you can imagine. You don't eat enough, you get weaker and weaker and weaker, and just makes the whole thing 100 times worse. And shit really hit the fan when, after I got married and got pregnant with my first, which I lost. I'm not surprised I lost them, because I was barely eating enough food to keep myself alive, because it was painful and because my body was wrecked. It was completely wrecked. So I lost my first. And then I got pregnant with Bubby, and some of you have seen me mention him on my Instagram, and I call him Potato. That is not his real name, but I call him Potato because when I found out I was pregnant, he was the size of potato. So that just became our nickname for him. And somehow, I don't know how, that baby is the healthiest baby I have ever seen. I was so scared. I thought he's going to have something wrong with him. He's going to have a condition. His lungs won't be developed enough. God forbid, because we have enough of a history of this. I thought maybe he has a problem with his lungs. Maybe he has a problem with his heart. I was so scared. I've had enough experience with dead and dying babies. I was so scared that he was going to have something wrong with him, but there was nothing wrong with him. And he was a huge baby, which presented its whole new issues. He was such a big baby. He is such a big baby. At the moment, he's 10 months old, and he's wearing 18 to 24 month clothes. He's that big. He's just a tall, broad baby, and he's so healthy. He hasn't got a single health issue with him. Thank God. But that pregnancy was evil. The first 4 to 6 months, I had morning sickness to the point where I was throwing up several times a day. I found it very hard to stand. I couldn't be in a car for longer than 5 minutes without having to just jump out of the door and throw up on the side of the road. Because he was such a big baby, he was very heavy, which completely ripped up my pelvic floor. And I'm not exaggerating when I say ripped up, and that's before he was born. So every time I stood up, it was like you had a knife inside your body that was on fire trying to rip its way out. That is not an exaggeration when I say that. That is how it felt. So towards the end of it, I got very well acquainted with crutches. And this is the reason why around, it would have been about 2 years ago. This is one of the reason why I just dropped off the face of the earth. I was in so much pain 24/7. And you can imagine what that does to you mentally as well. When you're in that kind of pain, you go into shutdown mode where you do everything you can just to completely disassociate, because it's the only way you can cope. And being pregnant, obviously, I didn't want to take I did pain medications. They did prescribe me codeine a few times, which I took, but I was just so scared for the baby that I didn't take it as much as now I would have taken it, because I've realised what happens when you don't take care of your mental state. It's not good. So I pushed through that whole thing, and baby arrived. He was born at home, thank God. And I know that probably sounds a bit insane actually, because I've just mentioned all these health issues, and you think, why would you not want to give birth in a hospital? The reason I didn't want to give birth in a hospital is because I've seen family members die in a hospital. So for me, babies and hospitals scare the absolute shit out of me. Nothing will send me into a panic attack faster than just the smell of a hospital. And you know the kind of smell, that kind of hospital cleaning product smell. Oh God, no, I hate hospitals. And I know that when I get stressed, I get very sick very quickly. Turns out I have an autoimmune disease, which explains it, but I'll get to when I found out about that later. But stress will actually send me to hospital. That's how bad my body reacts to stress, because when I get stressed, my body attacks itself and starts to cannibalize itself. Yay me. So I wanted to avoid a hospital at all costs, because I know that when I get stressed, things get very dangerous for me, and they would get very dangerous for Bubby as well. what mattered to what I needed to do at that point in time was I needed to be as relaxed as possible, and I'm relaxed when I'm at home in my own environment. So we had a water birth in the living room. I'll do a different video about that because that was good. I mean, it was good, it was bad, there were pros and cons. I don't think I would do a water birth again. I would do a home birth again. But anyway, he arrived. Whoo! That hurt. You know, just when you think the pain can't level up, oh boy. The pregnancy itself wasn't, the labour itself wasn't fun, but it wasn't as bad as what came afterwards. And think, you don't feel yourself ripping, that's the thing. I mean, I know you think, oh, you can feel yourself ripping. No, you don't. You don't. You just, the baby comes out and then the nurse says, oh, you know, you've got a 2nd-degree tear and it's quite bad. You're ripped front to back. And at that point, you just, there's so many hormones and endorphins and stuff like that going through your body that you're just like, I'm good. Is the baby fine? And the baby was fine. But afterwards, that's when shit really hit the fan. I thought once the baby had arrived, great, you know, I'm not going to be in so much pain, you know, I can get better now. No, it went bad, it got really bad. After that, because I was ripped front to back, you can imagine that made going to the bathroom very, very painful. So not only did I not like eating food, everything else got very, very painful. So my desire to eat fell off a cliff. And at that point, I didn't realise it, but my thyroid decided to give up the ghost. And that's what really pushed everything over the edge. I started losing weight at an insane rate around early December, and I got really scared when I stood on the scales at one point and I realised that I'd lost 3 kilos in about 4 days. And I only stood on the scales because I felt something was wrong, so I thought, I'm just going to check because I don't feel right. I feel so much colder all the time, and I noticed that when I sat down it was uncomfortable and I could feel the bones. And I've never had that issue. I've always been well insulated when I sat down. And I remember looking in the mirror, and I've got a picture actually because I took a picture at the time because I thought, you know, maybe something's in your head. If you look at it in a picture, maybe you can look at it a bit less. You can see whether you actually look as skinny as you feel. And this was weird for me because I've never been skinny. I've never been able to lose any kind of weight. If I put on weight, it was there to stay. Even if I was eating tiny, tiny portions of food, the weight was not going anywhere. And I'd accepted that a long time ago. I just figured this must be my natural weight. Okay, I'm good with it. And I remember taking a picture and suddenly being overwhelmingly scared. And that scared me because I'd gone to the GP quite a few times at that point saying, you know, something's not wrong. I'm not healing up down there. You know, that's kind of, you know, that's one of the main ones, but I felt like something was very, very wrong. And there was this overwhelming sense of doom that I just could not shake, that was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I remember taking that photo and thinking, I'm dying. I'm telling the GP, look, I'm dying, something is wrong. And no one is listening to me. And I was so scared. You know, I'd been scared before, but now I just remember thinking, I'm gonna die. I am gonna die. And because of all of this, I got postpartum depression. Surprise. You know, I would have been absolutely amazed if I hadn't got postpartum depression with all of that. And that took everything from bad to the worst it could possibly be, really. There is nothing more scary than having another voice in your head telling you terrifying things. Because I had this voice in my head when I picked up my baby saying, you don't really love your baby. You know, this baby, because of you, because of this baby, you know, you're sick and no one's listening to you and everything is so much worse. And I won't go into the other things that this bastard voice would whisper in your head. Because on one hand, you love this baby, but then there's this other voice. And that was terrifying to me because I knew that that's not what I thought. It was another little voice in my head. And it's the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced. I would take whatever kind of physical pain, you know, I would take labour 6 times over rather than ever have to deal with that voice in my head. And I remember going to the doctor, and this was a really bad day. Because I'd asked one of my sisters to just come around and take care of Bobby so that I could walk down to the GP. And it's a good 40-minute walk. And bear in mind that I still have stitches at that point. It's quite painful to walk. And it was a rainy day and I was walking down. And, you know, I could feel the stitches, and if I walked too quickly, they would rip open again. And this was 4 to 6 months, I think it was, after Bubby had been born. I should have healed a long time before that, but I wasn't. And it was raining, and at one point a truck went through a puddle and completely soaked me. So by the time I get to the GP, I think I'm 5 minutes late, but my brain is so frazzled, it turns out that I'm actually 15 minutes late, and I didn't realise. And the receptionist says, you know, you're 15 minutes late, I'm sorry, but you've missed your appointment. And I apologised, and I said, I'm so sorry, I didn't realise, I must have just put the wrong time on my phone. And I said, can I reschedule for today? And they said, no, we have a policy that if people miss their appointment, we assume that it's not urgent, and the only time you can get another appointment is in a month's time. And I broke down. I felt so sorry for this receptionist, because at first I left, and I thought, okay, you know, I did the whole British thing where I was just like, no, okay, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, and I left. And then it just hit me, you know, that sense of dread again. I just thought, I'm not going, I need to see a doctor. It was such an overwhelming sense of urgency in the point where you thought, if I don't get this fixed now, I'm dead. I'm dead, like, or at least my life will be in such a shit state, it won't be worth living, you know. I was so utterly incapable of doing even basic things at that point. Getting out of bed was agonizing. Going to the bathroom was agonizing. You know, I didn't have the strength to walk very far. It took me so long to walk from home to the GP, and you need to understand that beforehand, I was a walker. You know, I walked all over the place. I walked 200 kilometers up the side of Portugal in 2 weeks. You know, I walked all over the place. And now I couldn't even do that. I found it was hard to feed myself, to feed my baby, to, you know, keeping the house in check. Good luck. YouTube, forget it. I couldn't even write because mentally I couldn't handle it. And I went back to the receptionist, and I was completely soaked. I looked a sight. And I said, I'm sorry, I really need to see a doctor. And she said, I'm sorry, but we have a policy. And I started wailing. I broke down in tears, and I started giving her a complete list of my issues. And I said, look, I'm so sorry, but I'm ripped front to back, and it's so painful to walk, and I'm still bleeding 6 months postpartum. And, you know, I gave her a full list of everything that was happening, and I didn't care because I was shaking like a leaf. I was crying my eyes out, and I felt so sorry for this woman because she looked so horrified. She's like, no, you don't need to tell me. And I said, you know, clearly I do, because, you know, no one's listening to me. I need to see a doctor. It's urgent. And she was saying, you know, just give me your name and I'll get you to see a doctor. And I was trying to talk at that point, and I was so upset I couldn't get the word out. I had to write it out, my name, on a paper. Speaking of my name, that was a few days ago. The thing that had really pushed me over the edge is I realised that I'd forgotten what my name was. Someone asked me, kind of, oh, what's your name? And that was when I thought, I've got to see a doctor. I've got to see a doctor as soon as possible. This isn't normal. I forgot what my name was. And that scared the absolute shit out of me. And that's when I'd made the doctor's appointment. And the doctor saw me. And at that point, she figured, something is very wrong. So she ordered a whole battery of tests. And they found out that I have an autoimmune disease. I have IBS, which IBS is really just a cop-out. It's when you have incredibly sensitive internal organs. You know, if you eat stuff that your insides basically will bleed. For me, at least, that's what happens. If I eat a food that I'm no good with, I will get internal bleeding. And they don't always know what causes this. It tends to be just a term that they slap on something just to give a diagnosis, but they don't know the cause or necessarily a way to cure or maintain this. I mean, maintaining it sometimes, but it tends to be just, we don't know, so here's a kind of diagnosis that explains that you have issues with your intestines, basically. They found out that I'm full-blown celiac now. There's quite a few other foods that I also just cannot eat. And I've always known that. I've got very severe allergic reactions to things like cinnamon, cloves. But, you know, it got much worse. It got to the point now I can't eat gluten. I can't eat aubergines. I've got to be I can't eat fried food. Or, you know, not all fried food. Fried potatoes don't agree with me. I seem to be able to eat things like mash, fine. But if I eat fried chips, I will get internal bleeding. If I eat too much sugar, internal bleeding. And they found out my thyroid was dying. I have now been able to stabilize it, just because I decided to just attack this, and just any food that could make it worse I just didn't eat. And they also started giving me levothyroxine because my thyroid just isn't producing thyroid hormones. And it was incredible. I mean, it's been rough because levothyroxine, the first time I take it, it messes with your head for a few days, or at least it did for me. So when you have that on top of postpartum depression, oh boy, that's fun. But then it was weird. For the first time since I was 14, my depression went. And I remember, because I remember feeling like, it was like someone had lifted a black and white filter off everything. Suddenly, everything seemed brighter. The depression was gone. And you need to understand, that has never happened. There's always been a certain level of depression that's just maintained constantly. So for me, that was normal. And then when it was gone, it was weird to realize this is what life is like without depression, without this hormonal filter tinting everything. And suddenly I started to lose even more weight. And it wasn't in a weird way. I didn't feel bad while losing this weight, but just to give you an idea, I've lost 13 kilos since December. And it went from losing weight where I felt like my body was just giving up to where it felt like my body was cleaning house. It was just, suddenly it was able to function well. And there's still up and downs because it's an autoimmune disease, and like the GP said, it's just, you've got to be very careful with things because your body attacks yourself. Currently it's attacking my thyroid at any given chance, and it attacks my intestines or my reproductive system. That's another favourite. So I've got to be very careful because if this completely conks out, it's going to move on to another organ. So I've got to be incredibly careful with the foods that I eat, and also the amount of stress that I'm under, because if I don't, my body will cannibalize itself. Now this all sounds very morbid, but I'm very happy that I actually have this diagnosis, because now that I know what's wrong, I can work on it. And it is infinitely better to have a whole catalogue of foods that I just cannot eat and be healthy, to be able to mentally handle living, and to be able to get up and walk around and pick up my son, than to not be able to do that. So that is the health reasons that led me to make the decision that I need to make severe lifestyle changes. And that is the reason why I want to focus on this channel, because I want to focus on making content that's relaxing and enjoyable and that I love doing, and the whole kind of slow living, minimalist, make your own self-sufficiency stuff is what I love doing, and it's what I need to do with my life anyway. I need to be making this stuff because it's very good for me, and it keeps me healthy, and it keeps me sane, and I enjoy it, and I love it. So this is the kind of content that I want to be making going on from now, and writing as well. This is all stuff that fits perfectly into my lifestyle. So those are the multitude of health issues that and experiences that led me to make this decision. So I think that explains quite well why I've made this decision. So hopefully you are looking forward to having slightly more uplifting content up on this channel. I will have a new video for you soon, like I mentioned. If you want to be kept updated with my work on this channel, do not subscribe. Just don't do it. Don't bother. Follow the mailing list. I will have a link to that in the description on the website. What that means is that every single time I upload a new video, you will get it sent straight to your inbox. So there's no third party, there's no algorithm to mess with it. If you want to see it, it will go to your inbox. If you no longer want to subscribe to me, there's a link at the bottom of that email that says unsubscribe, and that's it. Simple, and that's exactly how I want it. So yeah, that is my explanation video. I hope you like the new content, and I'll have a new video for you soon.